Good evening, folks, and welcome to the June episode of Page Turner Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Karai Cooper, and with me, as always, is the lovely Rob Roy McCandless.
Oh, Rob. Lovely is a lovely term. I'm having a lovely day, too. How are you doing today, Karai?
I'm fine, thanks. You know, I try to come up with a different word for you every month.
Every month.
This month is lovely.
Lovely is wonderful.
Who have we got with us for our June show, Rob?
Karai, we have actually one of Elysium Press's, one of my publishing house's authors, one of the newest one, Keith Fentonmiller, and we're going to talk a little bit about his new novel, Fait Accompli, The Water Nymph Gospels, Book 1, which was published in May this year. But that's not the only book that Keith has. His debut novel was Casper Mutzenmacher's Cursed Hat from Curiosity Quills Press in 2017. This was a Forward Clarion Indies Book of the Year finalist in 2017 and shortlisted for the Editor's Prize. Kirkus Review described Cursed Hat as an undeniably imaginative journey that keeps the reader eager to uncover its final destination. And in addition to this, he will expand both books, Cursed Hat and The Water Nymph Gospels, as he moves forward. Keith graduated from University of Michigan with a degree in philosophy, which apparently did not qualify him for gainful employment. So he went on to graduate school, spent a year touring with a professional comedy troupe, writing and performing sketch comedy at colleges in the mid-Atlantic states. After that frolic and detour, it was a blur of law school, falling in love with cats, marriage, a dog, children, a fish, more dogs, another fish, a chinchilla, guinea pigs, and an assortment of uninvited rodents that have since burrowed through the foundation. And that is Keith in a nutshell.
Clearly your cats aren't doing their job if you've got
Yeah, well, we're on our second round of cats, and so they haven't had to deal with the rodents. Those were taken care of before they came into the picture, so they've got it easy. But we have our big cicada explosion here in the Washington D.C. area, and my fat guy cat, he really likes the cicadas. He has found them to be quite the delicacy.
Wow.
Yeah, they're frying them up all over the world. They say they taste like shrimp.
Yeah, or soft-shell crab. I heard another description. I'm sorry. I know it's really no different in principle than eating any other kind of protein or piece of an animal, but it's a frickin' insect, and
I'm just not going to eat bugs. My friend is always trying to get me to eat bugs because she's like this weird hippie horticulturist. Yes, Leela, I'm talking about you if you're listening, which you probably are. And she's always on and on about people eating bugs, and I'm just not going to do it.
Well, that is the future. If you watch, I guess, Snowpiercer or read the graphic novel, right? That's what we're going to be eating is ground up insects, and sort of or purple gelatin.
Goo or something. Yeah, I'm not going to live in that future.
Okay.
So no hidalgoing it for you, right? I tried to verb that. That didn't work very well.
Yeah.
That was horrible. No Viggo Mortensen racing a horse and eating bugs then, huh? Okay.
Well, if Vigo's doing it, I might be tempted.
You might? That's okay. All right.
New podcast, Eating Bugs with Viggo Mortensen.
I'm going to have to, I can only host that one. I can't actually.
That's my future. That's my future. I'll be eating second breakfast, bugs for second breakfast with.
We'll try to get Viggo on as your first guest.
That's only fitting.
Yeah. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
That is excellent.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your book a little. I loved it. I think Karai just loves mythology. When I said that this was Greek myth married with a Renaissance age story, I think she just flipped out.
I did. So when I was 10, I went to the library. I found this book called The Children's Book of Greek Mythology. And I had never read about Hera and Zeus and Aphrodite and, any of it before. So it just opened up this world of just mythology in general. Because a lot of different cultures have a lot of different kinds of mythology. The Egyptians have like Osiris and that vein of mythology. The Norse have Odin and Thor, and recently Loki, made more popular by Marvel. But the Greek, for some reason, really captured my imagination. Now, was this something that you were interested in growing up?
I mean, not especially. I certainly don't have a Norse background, but I think Greek mythology is such a profound part of our popular culture. As you mentioned, like with Thor and things like that, and Clash of the Titans. I'm probably dating myself a little bit with that, but
not at all.
It's certainly been part of the the Hollywood scene, and so it does tend to rise to the top in terms of mythologies to draw upon. But there are a lot of other wonderful mythologies out there that writers have been using in their fiction. Whether it's voodoo or Jewish, Kabbalistic philosophy,
the golem,
Native American. So there's lots of there's lots of non kind of Eurocentric stuff, but this is what I know, and there's just an endless resource of stories to draw upon, and sort of character archetypes to draw upon and to weave into a story.
Keith, you said something really interesting right before we started recording, in that there isn't a lot of like we roughly know the Greek myths and whatnot, but it isn't as hard canonically as one might think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly what I discovered in doing research, trying to kind of come up with the mythological basis of my story. I mean, certain things I think you have to go with, like Zeus was the king of the Olympians.
Yeah.
So
he was also kind of a pig.
Oh yeah, they all were.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Zeus, but the stories about you are not flattering. Like turning himself into a shower of gold coins just so he could seduce somebody. I would have gone for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a common tactic that I've used. I used back in the day when I was single. I mean, Zeus. To me, Zeus is quite a despicable. Not a human being, but an archetype in terms of, he's paternalistic in kind of the worst possible way, taken to its logical and most horrific extreme, in my view, in terms of, rapes and really kind of
just patriarchy.
Yeah. Well, patriarchy. Yeah. Brutal, horrific patriarchy.
Right. And no respect for women, like his wife. And it's just a bad example to follow.
Exactly. And that's why he's such a good foil, because I consider myself a feminist, proud feminist, and I don't want to beat people over the head with that, but the principle of equality and egalitarianism is certainly one of the themes that pervades my writing, and is something that, I don't want to be, I don't want to shout about it, but it is something that pervades the universes that I try to construct for the stories.
And I felt that came through in your book, Keith. As I was reading through, I felt that the female characters were at least as well developed as the male characters, and you had a nice the leads are one male character essentially and one female character, and I felt they were balanced anyhow.
Good. Well, that's good coming from a guy. Hopefully the women will feel the same way. They are the majority of readers.
Two men clapping themselves on the back, right? Well done, exactly. Dude. Well done.
Being so woke, Yeah.
What would you say? So, with all the research that you've done, now that we're on the topic of god feminism, out of all the gods, which one would you say was the most likely to be a feminist, a male feminist?
Oh, which of the males?
Yeah, definitely not Ares.
That's really putting me on the spot.
I know, that's what we do.
Yeah,
I none of them.
Exactly. I would say none of them. But if I really had to get creative and stretch things, I would say Hephaestus. He was kind of the sort of the disabled god who was.
And he was married to Aphrodite, was he not?
Right. He was married to the most beautiful goddess ever.
But she cheated on him all the time.
She cheated on him with Mars, and I'm sure others as well. But I don't know. I have a soft spot for the creative types, for the inventors. I just tend to think that they're the most critical thinkers, and they like to see how things work, and they like to find efficiencies. And I would like to think that egalitarianism is one of those fundamental principles, whether you're talking about machines or people. So I think he probably holds out the best hope of being the most likely to end up a feminist.
That's nice.
Class. Yeah,
that's nice. That's great. Question. Yeah. I love that. That was great.
So Keith, when it came to research, reading about the gods and finding out which one did what and what was this, what did you find out that surprised you the most out of these legends, these myths, or that you liked the most, or that appalled you the most? Like what struck emotion in you when you were reading?
I think what struck me the most, I guess I would say there are two things that really struck me. One is what we alluded to before, which is the fact that the mythology is not hard and fast. It's not written in stone. There is a lot of flexibility. There are multiple sources for the different stories about the different gods, and that really, is gold or fertilizer for the writer's imagination. And so it gave me a lot of flexibility, and I felt the ability to so most people know the fates, like the three deities that were the fates, and I took the liberty of combining them into a single character named Moira, who is but still tried to play on the theme of the three sisters, because that the three sisters concept is very important to the course of the series. So I just liked the fact that things weren't set in stone and that there was flexibility. In terms of, did I discover anything, any surprising things? Well, I suppose maybe it was that Zeus really liked knitting in his private time. No, I don't. That's not. That was just a rumor. Yeah, that. But I think I was not so steeped in really the brutality of some of these stories. The horrendous tortures that Zeus and others would concoct to stage these elaborate rapes and incest type scenarios. And I mean, what was going on with those Greeks? But they certainly created a lot of fodder for psychotherapists, later on. But yeah, just kind of the richness and diversity of the horror that fed the ancient Greeks' imagination, I think was a surprise to me.
No, that's well, I mean, it was a horrible time. Like, there's no there's no historical period where you really want to like transfer yourself and be there, right? Like we're at the best time right now.
You think so?
We are. You are much more likely to die in bed surrounded by family now than at any other point in history. Ancient Greece, when they were coming up with these myths and really developing them and becoming, these nation states and whatever, very chaotic, very brutal. You almost couldn't be a politician if you hadn't, served in a war and could show your battle scars up on the podium. It was just, horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, all the diseases and
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people died. People didn't live very long. I mean, I suppose most of the people died at birth or near birth, so maybe that kind of skewed the average age. But I would be surprised if it were much beyond the 30s. Yeah. So that's tough. It's very easy to romanticize. If I could only live back in the day, make ancient Greece great again. But when
those
you really
togas do look comfortable.
The toga part is a real seller for me. The toga, Mediterranean food.
Yeah, That's true, but you could do that now. You can do that, right?
Yes.
Good. Especially during COVID. I don't think there are any clothing rules during COVID other than a mask.
No, and I think post coming out of COVID, as we are, I think you should start a new trend. I think bring the toga back.
Bring the Greek lifestyle back. Period.
This is it. This is the launching point. When they look back, Kari, this was the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. You planted the seed.
The moment that changed North America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you could. Keith's book is all about like either you're locked into your fate or you are not locked into your fate, right?
Tell us about that, Keith. What is your personal belief about destiny and fate?
Well, I've thought a lot about this issue, and I guess I tend to be one of these people that I don't believe in free will. So, in that sense, I believe that we really can't fight our fate, although the good thing is that it's so unknowable that it effectively, has no practical effect on our lives. And I think the big thing in life that we have to come to terms with is that it's okay if we don't have free will. I embrace this philosophy, which is alluded to in the story, called amor fati. It's Latin for love your fate, the love of fate. So knowing that your destiny doesn't look so good, but you embrace it. I mean, this is the whole idea. So one of the main characters, Andalusia, his family is cursed to make hats. So they've been doing this for 12 centuries by this point. And you can either say, well, this is a horrible burden, there are so many other things I'd like to do, or you can embrace the fate and say, you know what? Screw you, fate. I am going to become the best hat maker there is, and I'm going to be happy. The philosophy, I think, is somewhat similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist. He developed a school of thought after Freud, and he was a survivor of a concentration camp. I mean, really brutal conditions. And he developed this therapy called logotherapy, which means you look for meaning. You try to find the meaning and purpose in life. And even in these horrific circumstances of the Holocaust, he was still able to find, I wouldn't say look on the bright side, that's a little bit flip, but just he was able to find meaning in the littlest things, in the smallest things. And I think that's where I come down on life. It's not necessarily these huge things, these huge accomplishments, but kind of just the little things, trying to find the beauty in interpersonal connections or nature or art. Those are the little things that give meaning to life and make a fate where we really truly don't have, I don't think, have free will. I think we do live in a deterministic world. And that's okay. That's okay. I can accept the fact that, my experience is that, it feels like I have free will, but I don't really think so. And it's just to kind of accept it and embrace it and enjoy the ride.
I like that. That works. And along those lines, is that part of why this family makes hats like this? In some ways, an artistic expression, but in other ways, a completely unnecessary thing.
A hat?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Rob. Have you ever been in the hot sun for 3 hours with no hat? How can you say they're unnecessary?
Maybe just because I'm not a hat guy. Like, I've never enjoyed wearing hats or I don't like hats. Maybe I'm just not a hat guy.
You should watch this. I think it's a Netflix series called Halston. It's about the designer Halston, and he was his claim to fame was making hats for Jackie Onassis, and but then hats really started to go out in the 60s. People just weren't wearing them as much, and now you look back at these older movies and you see the men are always wearing hats and the women are wearing elaborate hats, but nobody does that anymore. But for the thousands of years before that, hats were pretty normal, were pretty typical, and I think they were practical. Working in the fields, keeping rain off your head, that sort of thing. But even there's this human urge to the creative urge and the expressive urge. So you can make something that's just practical that'll keep the rain off your head or the sun off your head, but why not make it beautiful as well? And that's been going on for thousands of years. And maybe in some sense that embodies the same amor fati. Just you're not just creating things because they're practical. Practical things can be beautiful as well.
I sit corrected. I guess it just hadn't occurred to me that like at any other time hats were a needed thing, like something that you absolutely. I know. I'm such a
witches, cowboys, nurses.
Nurses. I don't know that I buy nurses.
They all wear hats.
But cowboys, okay, and you're right. Like, I guess if you're outside, which I guess most professions prior to whatever the last 100 years were mostly outside, right? Yeah. Then you absolutely need a hat in multiple capacities, right?
So right. If you're like Puss in Boots or the Three Musketeers, like pirates. Rob,
I'm sure that's right. You trade in your naval hat for a pirate hat, right?
Right. Sir. TV too. Like there's so many professions that wear hats.
Yeah, Rob. I don't know. Piracy is a profession, but it's certainly.
Don't say that to a pirate, Keith.
Well, that's true. That's true.
For the short time that they were, that was their profession. Yeah. Right till they got killed.
They had standards.
Yep. Some of them had very high standards. I don't know that they all lived up to it, but.
Right. Parlay. That's what I remember from.
Parlay.
Yeah. Parlay. Yeah. That was one thing that I remember.
That's the one thing. Yeah.
How long does it take you to write a book, Keith? And what are your writing habits?
Oh boy, that is a question and a half. So, I can only speak from my experience from this book and my prior book, and really the books are from the same universe. And it originally started out as a single book that I wrote in 2011 that went through the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Competition, and it ended up going pretty far. I didn't win it, but in any event, I realized after that I had a lot more story in there that I wanted to explore, and so I've really been spending the last 10 years since then fleshing out that story. The first book, the one that Rob Roy mentioned, Casper Mutzemacher's Cursed Hat, and by the way, you pronounced that perfectly. I'm really impressed. That story is from this series, the Water Nymph Gospel series. I happened to write that one first. Now, it'll turn out that's going to be expanded into books 2 and 3, but that's sort of emblematic of my, I wouldn't say scattershot, but a little bit desultory, approach to writing, where it kind of takes on, I think I have a self-contained story and a novel there, but then I wouldn't say tangents, but it starts to blossom. That sounds much better, doesn't it? And I realized there's a lot more story there that I want to tell. And so what started out as one book 10 years ago is going to be 5 books, and is 5 books. I've written all of them to one degree or another. So my process is I started out as a proud outliner, using kind of the lawyer side of my brain to, outline and organize. And I became a devout pantser, as I really got into it. And because what I found is that although I think it's important to have an outline, to have some idea where you're going, I find that I do my best writing when I write from my subconscious, not from the analytical side of things, and sort of let, free association and the impulses take over. And then I go back and shape. So it's not the most efficient process. I can't be cranking out books every 10 months. It's not a formula thing, but it is a very enjoyable process. Fortunately, I do enjoy writing and rewriting. So that's my approach. It's a little bit amorphous.
Do you find that you do a full first draft and then go back and edit, or do you edit as you go? I
tend to edit as I go. So so I have an idea, kind of a rough outline, and I know I'm going to write a particular chapter. But what I'll do is I'll kind of go back to the chapter before and read through that and do some revisions and kind of get warmed up and juiced up for the new thing. And yeah, so that's kind of how I do it.
Tell us about your journey to publishing with Elysium. How did you go about that?
Well, let's see. How did I go about that? Well, it's nothing particularly earth-shattering. I send out queries to indie presses that accept unagented submissions, and I got a few offers back. And Elysium was, by far the best situation in terms of the hands-on approach to the editing, to the book covers, and also to the stable of authors who were already there. I don't know if Rob Roy remembers, but I did exchange some Facebook Messenger messages with you and another author or two before I signed on, and so that gave me some. And despite all the awful nightmare stories they had, I signed on anyway. No. That gave me great comfort, and yeah, just the quality. I'm very honored to be in this stable of authors. So I think that just kind of speaks volumes. The type of product that they produce is high quality. So that was it. Of course, it would be wonderful to be able to publish with a major publishing house, but it's such a difficult process, first to get an agent, and then of course to get interest from that kind of big time interest. I think a lot of it really is timing and fate. And so I've learned not to get kind of hung up on those labels and the allure of big time publishing, because even those folks, most of them I think have struggles and don't end up doing well. So, and I just like being able to participate much more hands-on in the process. I used to dread the idea of having to deal with marketing and developing social media following and a newsletter and all that stuff. But now I kind of like it. It's so daunting if you haven't done it, but once you kind of do it slowly over time and develop it, it's not so bad, and it actually can be kind of fun.
Yeah. No, I do remember speaking with you. I thought that was pretty smart of you to reach out, and I was kind of honored that you reached out to me. I was like, okay, well, I'll share my experience, and I obviously I love Elysium and believe in it so much that when they asked me to become part of the publishing team, I was like, my immediate reaction was absolutely yes, but I'm like, oh, I better let me think. Let me not just jump on this because it's kind of a dream thing. But
yeah,
no, I've read your book, Keith. It sucked me in, and I was not on the publishing team when it was accepted, but I do know how Mare goes about these things, and I'm always impressed with the books that she brings aboard, and yours is no different. I just was sucked in by the characters and the story, and the pacing was so good. And and granted, I'm a little biased because you're an Elysium author, but still, it was delicious. It was such a fun read, and it's just great to talk to you about this stuff. So
great. Well.
Sometimes I gush too much about the authors we get to meet, but
that's what I'm trying to do. We're trying not to fan hard here.
Not too hard.
Yeah, I gush away. That's fine with me.
Well, you juxtapose the action, if you will, with ancient Greece. We talked a lot about that, but also the Renaissance. And why did you pick the Renaissance?
Yeah, well, so I developed this complicated family history. So I mentioned the Cursed Hat, that book, which takes place in the 20s and 30s in Germany for the most part. And so there was already a family history that I had developed. I had alluded to in a letter from Andalusia Petesos, who was one of the main characters in Fait Accompli. So that was already there. So I already knew that that character existed, and he and Carlotta Lux, both of those two were, really, really important to the whole course of this story, to the whole arc. So that put me there. And, it's probably a little bit random in terms of how I picked, they're from Livorno, Italy, which is near Pisa. And, frankly, it wasn't a whole lot of thought going into, well, why there? Except that the English used to call Livorno Leghorn. And Leghorn is famous for, or Livorno is famous for its straw, which is called Leghorn straw. And, Leghorn straw hats, when people used to wear such things, were all the rage. And so I just felt, well, it made sense that they should come from there and, make really good straw hats. That's where they settled after leaving Delphi. In the first millennium, they settled in Livorno. And Livorno, it turned out to be has a really fascinating history, because it was around this time in the early 1600s. It was still a relatively small city, but the Medici, had big plans for Livorno, because it was a coastal city, and Florence, is not on the coast. There is the river that ran to Pisa, but and then there was kind of a canal that went from Pisa to Livorno. But they really wanted to develop Livorno as a major shipping hub, and as a result, it sort of had the feel of like a young America, where it became this melting pot of different cultures, of Muslims and Jews and Africans, and to me that was really interesting, because the story of Cursed Hat and later is a story of, really is an immigration story, of a coming to America story. And a lot of what I explore in the later books are, one of the themes is, what does it mean to be American and to be different of a particular gender or race or religion? It's again, it's not hitting you over the head with it, but these are important things to the character's development. Mm-hmm. So that turned out to be, I'd say fate was really on my side there in terms of directing me, to Livorno, and it just seemed to be the perfect place for these characters to come from. Now, doing research was tricky, because it was for one, it was 400 years ago that I was looking to, and so trying to get a sense of, well, what was life like there, particularly in such a small city. And fortunately, living in the Washington, D.C. area, I have access to the Library of Congress, and I found correspondence there from English sailors who regularly traveled to Livorno and talked about things that were there. And in fact, I incorporated some of the things that they wrote about into the book. Certain places, certain types of questionable medicines and things like that were actually sold, actually from a leaflet that was circulated around that time. And then there were other books that very obscure books that I was able to check out from the University of Maryland, written by academics in Israel and Italy and Sicily, to try to get a sense of, well, what did they eat? What did they wear? What would be in a typical home? To me, those details are really important. I really need to have the sights and sounds and smells of the place in order to write. So it's a fun process.
And have you been?
Oh, I have been to Italy. I mean, I've been to Rome. I've been to to Athens, but unfortunately I have not yet. But I will get to Sicily. I will get to Tuscany for sure. But no, I haven't been there. Nice. Thank God for the internet.
right. That's...
Or Al Gore, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Either one is acceptable.
Yeah. I get them confused. Yeah.
If you're writing fantasy, if you've got an actual place in your fantasy, it's so important to pinpoint those details.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a little bit nerve-wracking too, though, because I mean, I don't know how many dyed-in-the-wool historians would be reading this and actually would know if anything's inconsistent. But there is always that worry in the back of my mind that, I screwed something up really badly.
Well, Keith, the internet knows. Trust me, they know.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I also liked is that, and I felt you kept your Renaissance stuff pretty on point. But what I also liked about the Greek side of it is you worked in a lot of anachronisms.
Mm.
Just in the way that,
yeah, sure, yeah, that was intentional.
Yeah, and well, you had like the Clarion.
Yes. You're yes, yeah. That was intentional. Yes, that's right. And I think that I just love that. That just like, well, what would be sort of the ancient Greek version of a mass communication system of radio or the internet, say? How would they? And I always like to make it a little bit absurd and peculiar. I just think it's funny. So yeah, right. The clarion calls, where you have 3 horn-playing giants blasting out essentially messages from the gods and other things, help wanted ads. God seeking demigod for romance. Right. That type of thing.
To kill sailors. I was at church. I read at church. That's how awful I am. And I hit that part and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to walk out in the hall. My gosh. Tentacled monster seeks, I don't remember it, and I just died. Right. Yeah. It's just like, oh my gosh. Anyhow, I thought that was lovely. I thought those anachronisms, like, it just felt like, and I was okay with it because I felt like, oh, well, these are gods. Like they could, they might have some sense of futureness to them, even though this is like the deep past that we're talking about. So I was okay with it.
Right. And in fact, Moira, who is the goddess Fate, and her whole dispute with Apollo over, equal pay or unequal pay. Yeah. That is certainly an anachronism, but I think it's an anachronism in terms of sort of, at the surface level. But I think at the deeper level, the whole inequality principle, I think it is true, certainly true to the the struggles of the time, and frankly struggles that are still going on to this day. So it's absurd, it's funny, hopefully, but I think there's an element of truth, even in the absurd.
Right. No, and it's like you said earlier, you don't have to beat your readers over the head with it. You could just be like, and remember, this is a thing, and remember, this is a thing, and these are things. Yeah. No, I loved it. So
great.
So Keith, if you could job shadow any Greek god, which one would it be and why?
Job shadow. Wow. Well, let's see. I think I'm going to go back to my, Hephaestus. I feel for the guy who's the inventor, who works with his hands. That's something that my novel kind of elevates. That people who work with their hands are most valued. People who are creative, who create things, not just with the snap of their fingers, but with their with their minds and, their intelligence. And so I think I would love to see all the inventions, the crazy machines and automata and that type of thing that Hephaestus probably, I'm sure, created, or at least he would have if he were a real god, or if gods were real. But that would be, that's my answer. I think, the other ones, to me, like Mars, the god of war, or they're more abstract and more two-dimensional in my view. So, but Hephaestus, he just kind of does his job. He's underappreciated, but I think he's the most talented, just in terms of creativity.
If you could date any of the Greek goddesses, which one would it be and why?
I think
Rob, this is important.
You're right. This everybody wants to know who Keith would date.
We want to know which one you would date.
Yes, we're looking for a love connection. I would probably say Artemis.
The hunter. The huntress?
That was
Yeah.
mine. You just took mine.
Really, and this is because I just really like strong women, self-confident women, and competent women. And I don't know a huge amount about Artemis, but I know enough. In fact, there's something in the story where it was when Zeus was lamenting about Apollo's incompetence in running Olympus while he was incapacitated. The mountain that he was sleeping with suggested, well, what about Artemis? And Zeus laughed it off. But I think that I would have held her in great regard, just because. Now, I don't know if she would have held me in any regard. I'm not sure of her sexual preferences. I don't know all the, but at least from my perspective, I think she would have been quite the catch.
I don't think she would have dated you, because isn't that the one that they tried to catch and then she turned him into a deer and then somebody shot him? And didn't
she repeatedly shot men who tried to catch her.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good choice, Keith, but I'm going to leave it with you.
No,
I like to live dangerously.
Yeah.
It's still a good. No, it's a good, because the men that she shot were these same gods and demigods that we talked about earlier that were just horrible people, right?
Yeah, they were asking for it.
They weren't interested in her as a person. They were interested in her as, just a, male gaze.
Yeah.
Yes. But she did fall in love with one of my favorite characters, Orion the Hunter. And but then there's either she accidentally killed him, she was tricked into killing him, or Gaia killed him accidentally. Either way, he ends up dead.
Yeah, that's it.
And then
socks on the floor. That that brings out the murder.
Left the golden toilet seat up. Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And Alice, if you were with her, you would never go hungry because she can always go out and get food.
That's right. And
a great provider, protector. I mean, I would be fine.
Like Aphrodite, who's just like, you know what? Here's my shell. Here I am.
Right. Exactly.
My shell. That's great.
It was a nice shell, though. Yeah,
it is. It was well painted.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Karai, who would you? So we know what Keith and I are both Artemis men. So who are you?
Who would I date?
Yeah.
Out of all the Greek gods?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Of the ones. There's Hermes. Like, I love his line of handbags, but I think he would be for a while. Those winged sandals. Just a fashion faux pas, so no. I'd probably say Ares, because, he'd probably be off at war most of the time. I wouldn't have to listen to him, wouldn't have to cook for him. I would still probably have a castle. He probably has a nice horse.
Not much of a romantic, are you?
No, not at all. I feel like I would just, I'd probably Aries.
All right.
I have, I think I probably have dated Aries, come to think of it.
You are a little more heavy metal, so, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Who, honestly, probably the what's his name, Hephaestus? I can never say that.
Hephaestus?
Yeah, Hephaestus. Honestly, I probably would go out with him. He's disabled, so he can't run away from me very fast. He would probably make me a whole bunch of things that I really liked.
Yeah.
And I read this one book, this version of Jason and the Argonauts, where they called him Rufus, and he had red hair. And I really like red hair. Like, in that, if he looks like, Domhnall Gleeson when he played Charlie Weasley or Bill Weasley in Harry Potter. That's how I pictured him.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So, maybe him. I think he's like kind of everybody's favorite. He seems like
he's
the most
really trending. He is trending, yeah.
He's trending, yeah. Because I think he's got more personality. He's more down to earth.
He's certainly one of the least offensive of the gods. Like, I mean, most of the Greek gods are just horrible people. Like, they're just.
That's what I mean.
Like,
how do I pick one?
Walking
how do I
kids,
pick one? Like, you didn't really leave me much of a choice.
That's fair. No, that's fair. I like either one of those choices.
Maybe Hercules. I don't know.
Demigod. Yeah.
He would be away a lot too. I liked Perseus. He had the I like that. I think I would date a half god.
Yeah. Okay. Someone who's a little more grounded.
Yeah,
right?
they tended to be more they tended to be heroes. They almost had to be heroes.
Mm-hmm.
The demigods.
And like Perseus, he got the what's his name? What's his name?
I don't know.
Not Shadowfax. That's Gandalf's horse. Who's the Pegasus? Pegasus.
Oh yes.
I would date never had Pegasus.
The horse's name is actually Pegasus, and then, if I recall correctly, and then people have just come to call all winged horses Pegasi.
Oh yeah.
Because there must be more than one, right?
Well, I don't know. I think he was like a special horse, but
he was. That's my understanding. Pegasus is the only one, but all winged horses are now Pegasus.
Okay, I didn't know there was like all these winged horses out there, Rob.
Everybody gets a winged horse. What are you talking about?
Now go.
Keith, next book, Winged Horse. What do you say?
Yeah. They're actually.
There's a winged horse out there named Bill listening to this podcast right now, saying we're not all Pegasus.
I think Bill wears a straw hat. That's what I think. Oh my goodness, we have gone way off the rail. So Keith, any final words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Final words of wisdom.
Now that we've gone way off the rails,
keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. I don't know.
Yes.
That's the old.
I love it.
Casey Kasem. He's a Detroit native. Where I'm from. So that's the best piece of fluff advice.
I want to know one more thing, Rob.
All right, one more thing.
Okay, Keith, if you could go into any Greek mythology, like any of the stories, because they're all the stories, which one would it be?
If I can go into the stories?
Yeah, like if you could pick one story, like say you had a time/fiction time story machine, and then it had like a seat, you could get in it, had a door that shut, you press a button, you're in any Greek mythology story, which one would it be?
I would probably, I really liked Lysistrata. This is where the women, all the wives went on strike against the men because they were tired of them warring, and so they stopped having sex.
Right.
And so, I just think that would have been a hilarious thing to be a fly on the stucco wall or whatever they made walls of back then. To see these very, very frustrated men and the women really putting it to them. So I think that would be hilarious. In terms of like the Trojan War and all that stuff, all the bloody stuff, that really does not interest me too much.
Yeah, it's very dangerous to go to the.
Yes, very dangerous. That's the word.
Very dangerous. Yep.
Oh, Rob, what about you?
Oh no. I'd want to go with the Argonauts, right? Like you don't want to go with Odysseus because he's the only one who makes it back, right? So you don't want to go with him, but you can go with all the heroes and go after the Golden Fleece, and that's where you get Heracles and everybody and doing their thing. Everybody, it's kind of a super band of Greek demigods running around. Totally. Yeah. It's
so like the Wilburys of Greek demigods.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
I would want to definitely go and be like Medea's apprentice, or swim with Lethe in the river, but not lose my memory.
Okay, all right.
Which would
Cersei, I think actually that's someone I would have liked to have hung out with and on the island, and she's very beautiful, but also knew everything about plants and herbs. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Well, Keith, this has been a great interview and a lovely journey with you. I'm a huge fan of Greek mythology. I didn't read your book this time around. Usually Rob or I square off on who reads the book, but I'm definitely going to read it because it sounds something like 100% up my alley.
Terrific.
And I did read it, Keith. It's wonderful. The name of the book is Fate Accompli, The Water Nymph Gospels, Book 1. You can get it on Amazon and pretty much anywhere else. I got it from Amazon. It's great. It's well done, well edited. And then also, Keith, why don't you tell us where we can get your other book?
Well, the other book is not in print anymore.
Oh.
I took that out of of because I'm expanding that into books 2 and 3.
Yeah. Excellent.
So eBay.
eBay is excellent.
eBay. And where else can we find you, Keith? Where to follow you?
Well, you can You can find me at my website, which is keithfentonmiller.com. You can find me at @kfentonmiller on Instagram and Twitter. So that's where I am. Also, I just want to mention that the audiobook for Fait Accompli is really excellent. The narrator that we hired, this guy Josh Brogadier, really has a diverse range of voices, and he's a wonderful performer. So if you're into audiobooks, I think you'd really enjoy it.
Maybe that's what I'll pick up. I love audiobooks.
Audiobooks are great. Yeah.
I love audiobooks. So there you have it, folks. Our guest, Keith Fentonmiller. Give him a like on Facebook. Give him a follow on Instagram. And pick up his book, Fait Accompli, from Elysium Press. And you can find that on Amazon. Or is it on your website as well?
I don't sell it off the website, but it's Amazon, Apple, iBooks.
Yeah, it's on everything.
Barnes and
Elysium's
Noble.
on everything.
Yeah.
Where all your good, where you can find all your good books.
All the finest books. That's right.
Well, that's all for tonight, folks. I'd like to thank Keith for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Good.
And as usual, the illustrious Rob Roy McCandless, who hates hats. We learn something new about Roy every
and the lovely Karai, who loves hats. So.
And as usual, shout out to our sponsor, Goodwin's Greenhouse Supply and Service. Grow Goodwin's. Good night, everybody.